So if you're looking to move to Spain in 2025 or beyond, there's 5 areas that you need to have locked down and understand to make for a successful move. Those are immigration, finances, location, housing, and healthcare. And today I'm going to cover those 5 different areas. I'm going to go through some of the basics that you need to know about. I'm also going to give you updates about these different areas, what might have happened in the last 6 months or so that you need to know about for an upcoming move. I'm also going to talk about a few common confusions and questions I see online. And finally, I'm going to give some actionable recommendations so you can keep moving forward with your move to Spain plan. So in short, if you're planning to move to Spain anytime soon, this video is going to be your go-to guide. For those who don't know me, I'm James Blick. I'm a New Zealander who moved to Spain about 13 years ago with my Spanish wife, Yoli, and I offer a course called the Move to Spain Masterclass. I run it twice a year. Hundreds of people have gone through it over the last 4 years, many of them now living in Spain. It's an 8-week program that helps you move to Spain and set up your ideal life here. The next masterclass is coming up soon, so if you're curious to learn more, I'll link it down below. Okay, let's get into it. The first topic is immigration, visas and residency. So in short, this is about how you can legally move to Spain. So if you are not from the EU or your spouse is not from the EU, then you're going to need a visa to move to Spain. And 3 of the most common ones that you'll see people talking about are the golden visa, the digital nomad visa, and the non-lucrative visa. And I'm going to run through each of these. Okay, let's kick off with the golden visa. So at the time of recording, the golden visa only has about a month and a half left before it disappears. So this is the visa whereby, well, currently, but soon to be in the past, you could buy a property in Spain worth 500,000 euros or more, and effectively through that, acquire residency. Now, this is disappearing for a variety of reasons. There's a housing crisis in Spain. Also, the politics, the EU is pushing European countries to get rid of these visas due to money laundering concerns. But in short, it's disappearing. And the date it's going to disappear is April 3rd, 2025. If when you're watching this video just as it comes out and it hasn't disappeared yet, do you still have time to apply? Well, it's pretty tight. If you have already bought a qualifying property, then yeah, you may have time to get the application in. You'd need to talk to an immigration firm straight away to get that organized. But there might be some people watching who are currently on the golden visa, and you might be wondering, well, what's going to happen to me? Can I keep renewing this visa that's going to disappear? Yes, you can. You have residency through the golden visa, and under the law that effectively canceled the golden visa, they've said that if you're currently on a golden visa, you can keep renewing it, assuming you still own that property, the qualifying property that you first applied with. Now, also keep in mind that after 5 years on the golden visa, you can actually then get permanent residency. So that's probably the next step. But let's talk about the other 2 visas because they're still functioning, they're still happening, and people are still applying for them, the non-lucrative visa and the digital nomad visa. So kicking off with the non-lucrative visa, this one is really popular. I see a lot of people in my Move to Spain Masterclass applying to live in Spain through this visa. Now, all visas have multiple requirements that you need to fulfill to apply: criminal background check, health certificate, health insurance, things like that. But each visa really has a core requirement that you need to make sure that you understand. And for the non-lucrative visa, it is the financial requirement. So effectively for this visa, you have to show that you were able to support yourself and those moving with you, your family, through savings or through passive income, right? That is the key aspect. You're not allowed to work on this visa. That means you're not allowed to work remotely for a company back home. You're not allowed to do work in Spain, all of it. You're not allowed to work. There's another visa for that, the digital nomad visa, which is the remote one, which we'll talk about in a moment. But how do you show that you can support yourself? Well, as I say, you may have savings that you can show you can support yourself for the time you're on the visa, or that passive income. So passive income could be anything from a pension, social security, it could be investments, it could also be rent, for example, as long as you're not running, property management business or something like that. So that means this is a good visa for people who are coming to retire to Spain, but it's not just a retirement visa. That's often a misconception. Might also be for families who want to spend a year in Spain, take a sabbatical. Effectively, you just need to show that you can support yourself for the duration of your residency without without working. So the big question is, how much money do you need? Well, the Spanish government uses a concept called the IPREM. And so currently at the time of recording, the IPREM, the monthly IPREM, is 600 euros. And to show that you can support yourself on the non-lucrative visa, if you're a single person, you have to show that you have 4 times that. Effectively, it means you have to show that you have just under 30,000 euros a year. 600 times 12, 600 per month times 12 is the annual IPREM, and then times that by 4. And then for each person that comes with you, you have to add on another 100%. So for a couple, you'd need to show that you have passive income or savings sufficient to support yourself to the level of about 36,000 euros per year. So my recommendation is, if you're not planning to work in Spain and you want to live here, then this is a really solid option. I will say, though, that if you do want to potentially have the option to work in Spain down the line, after a year on the non-lucrative visa, you can actually modify that visa to a work visa. Obviously, you have to go through certain requirements, so you can actually work, in the future in Spain. The other thing I would say is that if you're applying for this visa, you have to apply through the consulates in your home country. And be aware that although the law is the same for everyone, all the consulates have slightly different requirements, so it can get a little bit confusing. But just be aware when you're looking at what people are talking about online and giving recommendations, that they are specifically speaking about their experience of going through their consulate, and it can vary a little bit. Okay, the next visa, the digital nomad visa. So this one came out a couple of years ago, and it's been extremely popular because previously there wasn't a way for people really to move to Spain and work remotely. There were a few options, such as the Golden Visa actually allowed that, but this has really opened up the doors for people to come here, live in Spain while working for clients overseas or an employer back home. So in short, how this works is you have to be working for non-Spanish clients, or at least 80% non-Spanish clients. So that means you're working for companies overseas. You might be a graphic designer living in Spain, working for clients overseas, or you might actually be a remote worker or remote employee, whereby you have an employer back home who's allowed you to move to Spain and work remotely. Now, the key requirement here again is that financial requirement. And the calculation's a little different compared to the non-lucrative visa. So here it uses a thing called effectively the minimum salary, which is something that's an official amount that's obviously published in Spain each year. So if you want to move on this visa, you have to show that you can support yourself to the tune of 200% of the minimum Spanish minimum salary. For one person, 275%. For 2 people, it's 75% for the second person, and then you add on 50% for any additional people. So in short, for one person, you're looking to show that you're earning a minimum of about 33,000 euros per year. And for 2 people, it's a minimum of about 45,600 euros per year. And then it goes up after that. So I will say that one of the big bugbears of this visa, particularly for people who go through my courses, many of whom are from the United States, is that currently only people from a limited number of countries can come as remote employees. UK, Canada, Russia. If you're from these countries, you can move to Spain on the digital nomad visa while working as a remote employee for a company back home. But for the majority of other countries, you only have the option to come as a freelancer, including those who are coming from the United States. This is an issue with Social Security and agreements between the 2 countries. But in short, if you're from the US, as it stands at the time of recording, if you want to move to Spain, it means you have to become a 1099 contractor, and you have to move to Spain under the digital nomad visa on that basis. What that means is if you're an employee back in the States, you would have to change to a contractor role to your employer, and then come as a contractor, as a freelancer. So that's super frustrating. Hopefully it will be resolved soon, but as we say in Spain, las cosas de palacio van despacio. Bureaucracy goes slowly. Things from the palace go slowly. Terrible translation. Sorry about that. But yeah, this stuff takes time. So also, unlike the non-lucrative visa, with this visa, you can apply it from home through the consulates, or you can actually apply in Spain while you're on a tourist visa. And generally, it's better to apply in Spain because that way you get 3 years residency or up to 3 years residency. Whereas if you apply through your consulate, you only get a 1-year visa, which then you have to renew, which means more paperwork. So that's important. Also, what is great about this visa is the family members who come with you, say your spouse, they can work as well in Spain, whether it be jobs in Spain or remotely. So that is a huge benefit of this visa. So what's new if you've been following this visa for a while? Well, one thing is the UGE, UGE, the body in Spain that handles the applications for those who are applying within Spain, has kind of been tweaking the requirements behind the scenes, which has been very frustrating for a lot of people applying. They've made it stricter in terms of the evidence you have to show for your work experience. They've also made it more difficult for people who are coming as freelancers, but who own the company that they're working for. So say you're coming from the US, for example, there's a lot of people who are kind of, business owners and they work for their company, in the sense it's their company that invoices clients and then their company pays them. If they get wind the officials that you're coming through that route, then often they ask for a lot more complex requirements. So just a heads up. And I would say my recommendations for this visa, it's a fantastic one to apply for if you fit the bill. But because things are still changing and it's not very stable, unlike the non-lucrative visa, I really would use an immigration firm if you're applying, because effectively the official requirements are still the same and have always been the same, but it's the unwritten requirements behind the scenes that are constantly being tweaked. And you want to work with an immigration firm who's going to be up to date with all those latest requirements. Now, I also see some people ask a question, given the golden visa is disappearing, does that mean that the non-lucrative visa and the digital nomad visa might be about to disappear? And the answer is no, a very clear no. I can understand that when people see the golden visa disappearing, they think, oh, well, maybe Spain's sort of cracking down and doesn't want more people moving to the country. So that's a misinterpretation of why the golden visa is disappearing. As I've said, that's more connected to the housing crisis, politics, money laundering concerns. But Spain desperately needs migration. It desperately needs workers and people to come in to pay into the tax coffers, because we have an aging population that the country needs to pay for. So Spain is desperate for people to move. So I don't see any changes coming from the digital nomad visa or the non-lucrative visa, because the country is desperate effectively for you guys to come and become tax residents here. So I don't see those changing. Now, finally, I will touch on those watching who are coming from the EU. It's much simpler for you guys, but you still have a few things to do. So if you want to move here, in the first 90 days, effectively you have to apply for what's called an EU registration certificate, which is a way of legalizing yourself in Spain. For that, you have to show either that you're working or that you have savings to support yourself. And in the case of having savings, you have to show that you have health insurance as well. Once you have formalized your registration certificate, then your spouse or family members can also formalize their immigration and get those sorted out. I will say that often it takes more than 90 days to do the whole process and get all your family legalized and everything. So just be aware that by that stage, your family will have probably overstayed their 90-day tourist visa if they're not from the EU, in which case they're not going to get kicked out because they have an immigration process in process effectively, but it can make it a bit more difficult to get in and out of the country. So just be aware of that. Also, I will say that if you're coming as a family member of a Spanish person, a Spanish citizen, a law has been passed at the end of 2024, or an update to the immigration requirements, which are coming into effect in May 2025, which are going to give a specific process for the family members of Spaniards to get their immigration legalized. So more information will be coming down the line on that, and I'll make sure to provide that through the various channels. And guys, if you do want to get some help with the digital nomad visa, non-lucrative visa, or a last-minute golden visa, I'll link down below to a company called Bureaucracy, run by a fantastic woman, Marina Enestrosa, and her team, an immigration firm who do fantastic work, have great reviews, a great track record. You also get a 10% discount if you go through the link down below. So I'll drop that down below, and let's move on to the next topic. Next up, let's look at finances, a critical part of the move. But before we do, I just wanted to invite you to a free webinar that I'm running on the 4th of March called The 7 Secrets to a Successful Move to Spain. In this webinar, I'm going to go deeper into many of the strategies that you need to have in mind to set up for a successful move to Spain, and also really to set up your dream life here. We're going to look at your vision, immigration, the money side side, timeline, housing. We're going to touch on all the key aspects so that you can really have clarity on how you can go about this move. So guys, the webinar is totally free. It's really going to help you be more confident about your move or potential move. You need to register for it, and spots are limited. So go to SpainRevealed.com/Spain webinar to register. I'll make sure I link that down below, and I hope to see you there. All right, let's keep going and talk about finances. So finances are key. They really are the lifeblood of your move, and they really dictate things like where you can move to, when you can move, have you got enough money yet, and also how you will live in Spain. And I like to break the financial side down into two core aspects. First is the cost of the move, effectively, how much it costs to physically move to Spain, and then the cost of living. So really your first year is going to be more expensive because it involves the cost of the move. Then after, year 2 and onwards, you've just got your cost of living. So let's talk about the cost of the move. I did a survey where I surveyed the people who have gone through my Move to Spain masterclass and have moved to Spain, and I asked them all, how much did it cost you? How much did it cost you to actually make the move? And I saw quite a big range. Now, we should outline what this actually includes. Your move includes everything from shipping, visas, your first year of healthcare, which you'll probably need, private healthcare in Spain, flights, immigration help if you're, paying an immigration lawyer or tax attorney. So it can really include a lot of different things. And I saw that at the cheapest end, or at the lowest end, couples, 2 people would move spending, say, around 15,000 euros. And that was really, taking not much stuff, so not really shipping things, their flights, just their visa, maybe doing the visas on their own without any immigration help. And that was at the lower end of it. And then at the other end, I saw couples who were spending upwards of about 35,000 euros. Really, what was the biggest determiners of whether someone spent less or more? I really saw that it was based on how much they were shipping. That was a big cost for those who spent more. And also whether they hired help, such as an immigration firm to help with the visas, or a relocation agent to help them find an apartment once they arrived in Spain. Those really were the key factors. And also, actually, I also forgot to mention a key factor of these move costs are your landing costs, your landing pad costs. Maybe you got a hotel for the first 2 weeks or an Airbnb while you find a place to live. And then, when you rent a place, you're probably going to have to pay a couple months deposit and things like that. So you got to work those in as well. So my recommendation here is not just to give yourself one kind of budget for cost of living, but make sure you also work in the actual cost of the move. All right, let's talk about cost of living. And this figure really depends on the lifestyle you're going to lead, and also where in Spain you're going to be living. So, for example, there are some parts of the country that are more expensive and some that are less. So I'm going to list on screen now the annual cost of living according to Spanish data. This is the average annual cost of living of 2 people in Spain, excluding housing. This is important to say. So I'm going to list on screen Andalusia, Madrid, and Valencia. So this is excluding your rent or your mortgage. That's important because we're going to calculate that separately. And now I'm going to list on screen 3 cheaper areas to live in terms of annual cost of living for 2 people, the average based on Spanish data, again, excluding housing. So Extremadura, Castilla y León, Castilla-La Mancha. Those are the 3 of the cheaper regions. But you got to add housing onto this. And housing really is the big determiner. You'll see the difference between those cost of living in those different regions, the popular ones and expensive ones like Madrid, and the cheaper ones wasn't that much, because the biggest determiner is how much rent you're going to pay. So for this, I don't recommend getting anybody's averages online or seeing what the average rent is or anything like that. Just go straight to Idealista, the most popular portal for finding houses to rent and buy, or apartments to rent and buy, and see what the kind of place that you are looking for in the location that you're looking at is going to cost. So, for example, you might be looking at Malaga and the rent might be 1,600 euros a month, right? Well, you have to add that on to your cost of living. If you're looking at a rural area or a cheaper area, well, your rent is going to be less. It might be 1,000 euros a month. So that's how your cost of living is going to drop a lot. So my recommendation here is, before you move, you really want to understand your cost of living, well, what it will be in Spain, by looking at what you spend back home. Go through your budget at home and identify all the line items of your life, right? Maybe you go to yoga class or you go to the gym. Well, you're going to have to put a line item for that in Spain. So understand the structure of your budget back home, and then you're going to have to build out what those costs are going to be in Spain. You can do that through a mixture of online research, on scouting trips when you're here figuring out where you want to move to in Spain. You want to be looking at the prices of things so you can build an estimate of what it's going to cost to move here. Okay, let's touch briefly on taxes, a big aspect for many people moving to Spain, because effectively this becomes part of your cost of living, right? So for those who are new to all of this, just so you know, once you spend more than 183 days within a calendar year in Spain, you become a tax resident in Spain. Now, what that means, for all intents and purposes, is that you will owe tax, or at least have to file, related to your worldwide income and worldwide assets. Now, there are tax treaties between Spain and most countries around the world, which effectively means you won't pay double tax on this, but you may pay higher tax if you're coming from a country where the tax is lower. You're going to pay the difference effectively. Now, you may have heard of a scheme called the Beckham Law. Effectively, this is a tax scheme whereby some people coming to Spain can pay a preferential tax rate and also not pay wealth tax on their international assets. So whether you apply for this or you can apply for this, you need to speak to a tax attorney. Just a big heads up for those digital nomads out there. If you're coming as a freelancer, then pretty much you can't apply for this. For those coming as digital nomads, which is a misnomer completely anyway, or those coming under the digital nomad visa who are remote employees for an employer back home, you may be able to apply for this. But if you're coming as a freelancer through the digital nomad scheme, it's not going to apply to you. There are a few exceptions, but for most people, it's not going to apply. So some of the biggest conversations I see online around tax are around the wealth tax, and also, which would be a cheaper region to move to in Spain from a tax perspective. So the different regions of Spain handle part of their taxation themselves, and that does mean that from an income tax perspective, there are variations in the income tax that people pay in the different regions of Spain. But generally, the variations are not enough to really mean one area is going to be much cheaper or more expensive than another. So in terms of choosing where you want to move to from a tax perspective, I wouldn't get too worried about the income tax side. On the wealth tax side, yeah, this does become relevant because each region has a certain amount of exemption or exclusions that each person can take advantage of. So, for example, in Valencia, at the time of recording, effectively your first 500,000 euros is exempt from the wealth tax. Now, around this, I see a lot of people saying that Madrid and Andalusia do not have a wealth tax. That is not true. That used to be true. There was a while where they had a period where they had cancelled the wealth tax, but effectively now Madrid and Andalusia just have a higher exemption. Effectively, it's 3.7 million euros in each case, whereas in other regions it might be 500,000 euros, 600,000 euros, etc. So you would want to speak to a tax attorney before you move, a Spanish tax attorney who can help you understand the wealth tax implications of your move. And I really recommend you doing that if it's something that you're concerned about. Now, I do see some people saying, is there a way to avoid the wealth tax and things like that? Well, apart from conversations about the fact that you should pay your fair share and under the laws of the country you're moving to, it does make sense, obviously, to be smart about how you handle the tax side of your life. So no, you can't avoid the wealth tax. Obviously, the Beckham Law is there, which means that you can not pay wealth tax on international assets, but it is worth speaking to a tax lawyer in advance because wealth tax, other taxes in Spain are individual, so you'd want to look at if you're moving with your spouse, how who holds what assets and things like that, because how that balance is between you and your spouse may impact how the wealth tax is applied. And the other thing I see is people talking online about how different retirement products are handled from a tax perspective in Spain. And there's a lot of conversation about this because in many cases, there's not one clear answer. Because if you take a retirement product from overseas and bring it into Spain, it has to be interpreted through Spanish law. And that can be complex when a similar product doesn't exist in Spain. And effectively, one person might get some advice on their situation from one tax lawyer, another person might get some advice from their tax lawyer, and that advice is specific to that person's financial history, how their retirement product was designed, built, where the money came from. So in short, you really really do need to speak to a tax lawyer in advance to understand all these aspects and how they're specific to you. And in short, don't go to Facebook for advice. Okay, location. This is an important topic because really where you live in Spain is very tied to your lifestyle, your budget, really your happiness. I think it's really important to spend time doing online research, speaking to people, doing scouting trips to really understand what is the right place in Spain for you. In a country that is extremely varied, right? Has a lot of different landscapes, experiences, climates to choose from. So to tackle this, I thought we'd kick off by looking at some of the more popular areas, and then I'll give you some ideas for some lesser known areas. So for the more popular areas, I pulled some data from my most recent cohort of the Move to Spain Masterclass of where people said that they wanted to live in Spain, where participants of the course told me that they were looking to move to. So I've got it in front of me. 47% of the people in the course said that they were considering Valencia as one of their options. That's a huge percentage. I'll keep going through, then I'll break down and give some comment on the different results. 36% said they were looking at Andalusia, somewhere in Andalusia. 22% said they were looking at Madrid, which usually means the actual city itself. Madrid is also a region, for those who don't know. 15% said Catalonia, Barcelona, Girona, areas like that. And 14% said Galicia, and 14% said Asturias. Now, that adds up to more than 100%, because when people take the course, they can tell me where they're looking to move to. And obviously, in many cases, they might list multiple places. We're looking at Valencia, Madrid, and maybe Catalonia. Those are the most popular ones. So let me break them down. Valencia. Ever since I've been offering this course for the past 3.5 years or so, it has always been such a popular destination. And I understand why, right? It's the third largest city in Spain, and it ticks a lot of boxes for people. It is a big city, but it's not too big. It's on the coast. It's cheaper than Barcelona. It has wonderful, areas to explore around it. Has the mountains. It has the sea. It has the Albufera. It's a beautiful city. But I do see challenges here. This city is getting so popular that I wonder if at some point the bubble is going to burst. Housing is expensive and in short supply, and I just wonder if people are going to start looking elsewhere. However, for the time being, this remains such a popular destination, and it is a beautiful city. Now, you might be wondering how the city is getting back on its feet after the recent severe and catastrophic flooding. That flooding was focused to the south of the city, in towns that were just to the south, not in the city itself. Those towns are getting back on their feet. It's taking a while. And actually, this was a driver for me to add to the course some resources on natural disaster risks in Spain and climate change risks and how it impacts the different regions, because I see people starting to ask for that information. So in short, Valencia remains really popular, but I just wonder how long that intensity can last. Let's move down. Andalusia. Look, Andalusia has always been a classic choice for people moving to Spain. It has great weather, it has wonderful culture, incredible food, and particularly the Malaga area, the Costa del Sol, has always been really, really popular. Malaga City is another one that I'm seeing a lot of demand. My comment on that would be that Malaga City, a little like Valencia, is a city that has become really popular in recent years. There are housing shortages. It's a city that's really popular for tourists. So I'm not sure if you're looking to move to Spain and sort of set up a real life here, whether Malaga City, specifically the historic part of the city, is the right choice for many people. So if you're looking at the Costa del Sol area, there's a lot of great towns along there. There's Estepona, there's Benalmádena, there's a variety of different places that I see people looking at who want to build a real life in Spain. Nerja as well. I recently did a video with a couple there, Debbie and Kevin, who have moved to Nerja, and also some places inland. And if you are looking at moving to Andalusia and you want to be near the water, lesser known areas that I think should be considered are Cádiz, or Cadiz, as we say it in English, wonderful city, and also the Costa Tropical, which is the Granada coast, which is lesser known, but also beautiful. And I think what you'll also find is as prices rise in the more popular areas in Malaga, for example, and Andalusia, those are some areas where prices are still a little bit more reasonable. Okay, Madrid. Now, this is an interesting one because when I moved to Spain, to Madrid 13 or so years ago, Madrid was really off the radar for both tourists and also people moving here in many ways. Barcelona was the really popular place. Feels like the Barcelona bubble burst a little bit, became really expensive. The independence movement in Catalonia kind of made people feel like maybe that's not quite the right choice for me. And Madrid in the last sort of 5-10 years has really surged as a destination. And I'm seeing the city become much more international, that has both good and bad impacts for people living here. But it is a city that feels, like it's a great place to live, to be honest. Okay, we don't have the Med here. We don't have the water, but we have beautiful mountains to the north, which are great for walking and hiking. And the city just has so much to offer. It has vibrancy. It has wonderful food from across Spain, but from all over the world. And moving to Madrid doesn't necessarily mean that you have to move to, the city in and of itself. There's towns just to the north. Pozuelo is one. Another one is Torrelodones. These are areas that are between the city and the mountains that give you the opportunity to have like a home with a garden and a pool, but you're still, within driving distance or within public transport distance of the actual city itself. But like any capital, Madrid is busy, it's more expensive, it has tourists, so it is certainly one of the most expensive places to live in Spain, so that's something to keep in mind as well. Okay, next up, Catalonia, which we saw, about 15% of people said that they were looking at. So when we think of Catalonia, you might think immediately of Barcelona, the capital of Catalonia. So as I say, Barcelona just sort of feels like if it was trending 10 years ago, it's not so much anymore. Look, it's still a hugely popular city for tourists, and that's kind of part of the challenge and part of why I see people not as interested in moving there. When I see people moving to Catalonia, the kind of places that they're looking and that you might like to have a look at are, for example, up the coast, the towns up the Costa Brava, which is up the coast to the north towards France, and also the lesser known coast, the Costa Dorada, the Golden Coast, which is to the south in the province of Tarragona. Was it last summer? And some beautiful beaches, some beautiful towns, and a little less overrun, a little less well known compared to the Costa Brava. I also see people moving to Girona, a popular place for people to go to, particularly those who want to live in a smaller town, want to have access to nature. It's really popular with cyclists, those who want to go hiking. So that's another city you might like to check out. Finally, Galicia and Asturias, and just sort of northwestern Spain in general is still quite niche for people to move to. A lot of people coming to Spain in the end want the Med and want that whole Med lifestyle. This is an area where, the summers are cooler, right? We spent a couple years ago, we spent much of August in Galicia, and it was wonderful. The nights were still cool and the days were really warm and lovely. Something to be aware of here is that winter is winter in these places, and it can rain a lot and be quite gray. And so while it might be lovely in summer, you have to be ready to deal with the winter. Also, these regions are a little bit cheaper than, say, moving to, Malaga, the Costa del Sol, or Valencia, potentially. So keep that in mind, that you can have a slightly cheaper lifestyle in the north, but I don't think it's for everyone. But I think it's worth exploring if kind of what I've been saying does pique your interest. So some other options to consider, a bit more left of field. I'm seeing a little bit of growing interest in smaller towns. I mean, still big places, but inland areas that are smaller, such as León, Zaragoza, Logroño, for example, as well. Moving to these towns are not for everyone, right? They've got less population, a little less diversity, a little less, you're not going to potentially get great international food, for example, or have the latest opera playing there. But, it has great lifestyle in these places, and you have great access to nature. It's a little less harried. So, consider those options as well, those sort of smaller inland areas. And if you're interested also in moving to a village in Spain, keep in mind that Spain has a fantastic rollout of fiber optic, more and more, even in the rural communities. My Spanish teacher lives in a small town, a small village in Asturias, and she gives all her classes online. So, that might be an option for you if you're working online and working remote, the village lifestyle, if it's right for you. That's a big caveat, because it's not right for everyone. Also, I thought it would be interesting to look at the 3 most expensive regions to live in, according to 2023 data, and also the 3 cheapest regions to live in, according to 2023 statistics data. So the Balearic Islands, Madrid, and the Basque Country are the 3 most expensive areas. But the cheaper ones, we saw these earlier, Extremadura, Castilla y León, Castilla-La Mancha. So if your budget is tight and you don't mind living inland and away from the water, these regions might really offer an option for you to move to Spain sooner than you thought, or actually be able to move when previously you might have thought, well, it's a bit too expensive for me. So my two recommendations here on location are spend time with this decision. It's a really important one. And you need to be able to understand where you can move to. You need to understand the vision for what kind of life you want to live in Spain. Does it need to be Madrid, or could it be Logroño, for example? And you need to understand your budget, because in the end, the cost of living in Madrid or Logroño, for example, are going to be very, very different. So you need to do that work to understand those aspects before you can really pick a location. And then when it comes to checking out locations, obviously do a lot of online research, but if you're able to, take the time to do one or more scouting trips. Rent a car, explore, drive, really get a feel for the different regions, a feel for the country. And I think, getting that feel will really help you make a more informed decision, which will hopefully mean you move to the right place for you first off, and save having to make a change down the line. Okay, topic number 4 is healthcare. Now, this is a smaller topic, but it's a really important one. And it's quite likely if you're coming with a visa, and even if you're coming through the EU, you're going to need private healthcare. So I see online a lot of confusion about some core aspects of getting private healthcare to move to Spain. And I want to tackle those here. The first one is pre-existing conditions. People are understandably confused about how any pre-existing health conditions they have might impact their ability to get private healthcare and thus impact their ability to move to Spain. Just a general rule, pre-existing conditions by their very nature are never included in your private healthcare. They are always excluded. Now, what that means is it might simply mean that pre-existing condition, an issue you have with your leg, is excluded from your cover, but you still get cover, meaning you have to pay out of pocket to treat any issues to do with your leg. I'm just making the leg thing up. But it also can mean that depending on the pre-existing condition, if it's more serious, brain issues or some types of diabetes, it means that you are denied cover completely. Now, in the circumstances where you have a pre-existing condition that has been excluded by the insurance company, in that case, you can pay out of pocket forever for that pre-existing condition, or after a year of living in Spain, you can actually pay to go onto the public system. Now, I should also say that if you are working in Spain for a Spanish company, then you likely won't need private healthcare because you're paying into the Social Security system, and you will get public healthcare and you'll get cover directly. The other aspect is it's true that there are some pre-existing conditions, some brain issues or some types of diabetes, in which case the insurers will completely deny coverage for you. These areas are more complex, and it really is important to speak to a health insurance agent or broker before you talk to the health insurance companies to really understand how best to make your application to try and get cover. And I'll talk about that in a moment. Second one is age limits. So 3 years ago, for example, or 2 years ago, it used to be that really around 74 years old was the oldest you could apply to get private healthcare that would allow you to get a visa to move to Spain. That has changed. There is a plan now available. It's a little more expensive, but effectively, someone of any age can apply for a visa using this plan. It's a plan offered by one particular company called DKV. And if you're curious about that, my health insurance broker actually works with DKV as one of his providers. His name's Janice. I'll drop his contact form down below. You can get in touch with him. And this is great because I used to hate getting emails from people. I'd feel so bad when they'd say, I'm 77, my wife's 73, and we want to move to Spain. It's like, it's really hard. There's not a plan for you that will allow you to get the visa. That is not an issue anymore, which is wonderful. Now, the third point I wanted to make here is how to go about getting healthcare coverage. And this relates a little bit to the first topic, which was pre-existing conditions. I say this a lot, and you may have heard me say this before, but the best way to get health insurance in Spain is not to go directly to the health insurance companies. You want to go via an agent or a broker. What's the difference? An agent will represent one health insurance company and a broker will represent various. That's the only difference. But effectively, they do the same job. Why do you want to go through one of these middlemen effectively instead of straight to the health insurer? Doesn't it sound like it's going to be expensive and a pain? No, it's going to be the same price. In fact, going through an agent or a broker, you may pay less because often they get bulk discounts. And effectively, effectively what it means is that if you need to have an open conversation with someone about your health before you apply to the insurance companies, you can do that in confidence with the agent or broker, and they will not share that information with the insurance company. They're not obliged to. Double check with them first in their case, but they're not obliged to. They're kind of like your priest and confessioner. You can have a conversation with them, and they understand what the health insurance companies are likely to focus in on when it comes to filling out the medical questionnaire to get cover, and can help you understand, how to frame your health situation in your application to the health insurance company. And then what is really fantastic is they then provide ongoing support during the life of the policy. So, for example, I have healthcare, my wife has healthcare, private healthcare in Spain. We contracted that private healthcare through a broker, and I only ever deal with my broker. If I have questions about my healthcare, I email him. I have never even been in touch with the health insurance company. I've never called that call center, which is so much easier because he knows me. It's a personal relationship, and it's much better. And that's key. If you're moving to Spain and your Spanish is not great, it's nice to know you can talk to an English-speaking broker or agent instead of having to call the call center and potentially struggling through in Spanish, particularly when you're talking about important health aspects, right? So my two recommendations here are healthcare and private healthcare insurance is a marketplace. So you want to get multiple quotes from different health insurance providers so you can understand the different costs and benefits that the different policies provide. But the second recommendation is you want to do that process through the lens of an agent or broker. It's going to be a much better application process, and the ongoing support is going to be fantastic. Okay, topic number 5, housing. So effectively renting and buying, what you need to know. So this is a big topic in Spain right now due to the housing crisis. So I want to give you the key information for 2025. And yes, I will address and touch on that proposed 100% tax on non-EU, non-resident buyers that Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister, mentioned a few weeks back. Okay, let's kick off with buying. Now, first of all, top line, it's important to know that house prices just keep on going up. House prices rose across Spain on average in 2024, 8.5%, which is the highest rise in about 20 years. But obviously, the actual rise in house prices is not distributed evenly throughout the country. So we've got some figures here on the screen. Madrid, 20% up, a huge jump. Valencia, 24%, Malaga, 21%, Barcelona, also a jump. And there's no real sign of these dropping soon. So I think that's important to keep in mind that if you're budgeting for a move to Spain and looking at buying a home as a part of that, just be aware that if your move is X number of years away, then you're going to have to factor in this increased cost of your move. And it may go up faster depending on where you're looking to move to. Now, this 100% tax proposal that was proposed a few weeks back and really got all the headlines. Let me just kind of break that down. I've done some content about this to demystify it a little bit. But the first thing I want to say is that we don't really know much about this. We don't know what he meant. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, the Prime Minister a few weeks back said that as a way to limit foreign buyers who are buying second homes in Spain, he wanted to introduce 100% property tax for anybody buying a home in Spain who's not from the EU and is not a resident in Spain. So what did this 100% tax that he talked about mean? Well, we just don't know. It could be 100% on the purchase price, meaning if you buy a 300,000 euro home, you have to pay 300,000 euros in tax, or it could mean that it's a doubling of the transfer tax that you pay when you purchase a home, for example. We just don't know. But I think the key here is this is just a proposal. It was one of a multitude of proposals that Pedro Sanchez announced to tackle the housing crisis. And while we don't know if it will even become law, he's got a minority government right now. I think it would be very difficult to pass. It may have just been more of an announcement to kind of shake things up in a political play. Who knows, right? Just to be clear also about this proposed tax, it was proposed as something that would not apply to EU buyers. That's because that would go against effectively EU laws where there's freedom of movement and freedom of capital. And it was also proposed that it would apply to non-residents. what that means is if you're moving to Spain on a non-lucrative visa or a digital nomad visa and you're living in Spain, then this proposed tax would not apply to you. It's only for people who are living, as I say, in non-EU countries who are looking to buy a second home in Spain. But my recommendation, be aware that this is a hot topic. Prices are rising, and that who knows what's going to change in the legal situation. So you might want to think about buying sooner rather than later. Okay, next, let's talk about renting. Now, just as a headline, I really recommend that if you're moving to Spain, you look at renting first. It is much easier if you pick Valencia but realize it should be Madrid, well, after 6 months, effectively, you can cancel your rental contract here in Spain. But if you've bought a property, that's a huge situation, a huge asset that you have to deal with and potentially sell for you to be able to move. So I think give it at least a year renting before you look to buy, unless you really know Spain really, really well. Okay, on renting though, we have seen, like we've seen with buying, that prices keep going up and there's a lot of demand and not so much supply. So here's some numbers. So over the last year, the growth in rental prices in Madrid is 15%, Valencia 12%, Malaga 11%, Barcelona 14%, and even big increases in Galicia and Asturias, these northwestern regions. And here's a quote from the Idealista spokesperson. They said, "A state of anxiety and urgency has taken hold of the Spanish rental market. For some time now, the problem is no longer just the price, which remains extremely high, but rather the growing competition among families has become the main challenge." So effectively, you've got issues with price and issues with supply and demand. And if you're moving to Spain from overseas, you have an additional challenge in that Spanish landlords generally prefer tenants who have a Spanish contract. That's because then they can take out non-payment insurance against that tenant. Many of these insurance policies exist in Spain, but they will only apply, you can only take them out against a tenant who actually has a Spanish income, a Spanish contract. Meaning if you're moving as a foreigner from overseas and you have savings or you have overseas employer or clients overseas, that is not as attractive to a Spanish landlord, which means it's really important to put your best financial foot forward when you're looking at possible properties. And what I see is, say, people who are looking at moving to Valencia, it's already a market where there's a problem with supply and demand. There's not a lot of supply, there's a lot of demand. And then given that they're coming from overseas, inherently they're less attractive to landlords. So this is part of why I say, places like Valencia, for example, may become less popular with some people moving to Spain because it's just so hard for many people to get set up there. And there's another couple of aspects I want to mention about renting here in Spain that you may encounter when you're moving here. One is when you go to Idealista and you find a place you want to rent, usually it's going to be a real estate agency that the owner, the landlord, has hired to rent that property. And so it's the real estate agency that you're going to be dealing with. Now, it used to be that as part of the kind of standard practice is you would pay, for example, 1 month's rent in advance, 1 to 3 months rental deposit, and you would also pay, the tenant would pay 1 month's rent to the agency as effectively paying their fees. Now, a few years ago, a law was passed that made that illegal, effectively saying that the real estate agencies can't pass on to the tenant the fees for their service. They have to charge the landlord, which makes sense, right? However, that kind of broke the whole model that a lot of these real estate agencies were surviving on, and so they've been trying to skirt around it by hiding this 1 month fee, effectively using other terminology such as a search fee or whatever it may be. Effectively, all these things are illegal. That the tenant should not be asked to pay 1 month's rent as a service fee to the landlord, but it is still happening, and I'm seeing people still pay it, even though they know it's illegal, because there's so much demand in the property market that they just think, "Wow, I'm just going to pay it because I really want to get that property." Now, what you could do is you could potentially pay it, and then you could make sure they're going to give you an invoice, that agency, and effectively that will be proof that they made you pay something they shouldn't have got you to pay, and you may be able to claim that down the line. The other thing I see is that by law, the landlord can only ask for up to 3 months deposit for a rental property, effectively as a guarantee that they can use to put towards any damage that's done or cleaning that needs to be done at the end of the contract. However, I'm seeing landlords ask for more than 3 months. And again, in some cases, people are just paying it. in some cases knowing that it's illegal or at least it goes against the law, but they're paying it because they're so desperate to get that property that they're like, well, we're going to pay 6 months deposit. I know I shouldn't have to pay this, but I just want to get a home. So just so you know, the law says 3 months is the maximum. Okay, and here are 5 recommendations with regards to renting for your move to Spain. First, as I said, rent before buying. Make sure you know the place that you're moving to, the city, the region, before you dive in and buy a property. Second, if you see on Idealista and landlords saying that the contract is for 11 months or something shorter like that, then take that as a warning sign. Effectively, the landlord is trying to skirt around tenancy laws that provide you, the tenant, with protection. Effectively, they're trying to make it this short-term contract, which means that they don't have to be bound by laws that prevent them from raising the rent annually, things like this. It doesn't work what the landlord's trying to do, but it's just best to avoid those because it shows that the landlord doesn't really want you to be there long-term and wants to potentially raise the price each year. Third, if you're looking to rent in competitive cities, I see a lot of people saying, I'm emailing landlords, I'm emailing real estate agents, and they're not replying. We want to move to Spain in 3 months. Do not bother. Nobody in these, in-demand cities like Valencia, Madrid, Barcelona is replying to emails for somebody who wants to come in 3 months. You really need to be Johnny on the spot. You need to be there hustling, going and seeing properties because, a really nice rental in a popular destination is going to disappear like that. So you really need to do it once you're in Spain. So that leads me on to tip 4, which is when you arrive in Spain, you want to have like an Airbnb or a hotel set up for the first 2 to 3 weeks, and you're going to use that time to hustle on the ground to find your rental property, right? And be ready to really rent it in the moment. Once my wife and I, and this is 7 or 8 years ago, we were in Madrid. We visited a rental property in Madrid, and I was like, let's think about it, Yoli. My wife was like, no, it's really good. And I said, let's just walk around the block and think about it. We walked around the block. By the time we'd walked around the block, somebody else had rented it. Now, I don't say that to warn you, to scare you, but just to show that the idea of writing an email 3 months out, it's pointless. If you're moving to a less popular region, maybe that's going to work. And this leads me on to tip number 5, that if you're at your wit's end and you really want help when it comes to renting and having someone represent you and do the hustle for you, then you're looking for someone called a relocation agent. That's the service that helps with getting you set up in a destination in Spain, finding schools, opening bank account, and finding a rental. And I see a lot of people hire relocation agents because it just takes a lot of stress out in that really key moment when you've arrived in a place and you're dealing with a lot. So I think they can be a really great service that can help just kind of smooth the rails in your first month or 2 of your stay. So guys, if you actually want help from a relocation agent or any of the other professionals, some of which I've mentioned, who can help you on your move to Spain, I've got a link down below where you can go through to a page where it has a list of my vetted professionals that can help with all different areas of your move. And there's forms there that you can get in touch with them. And also, I'd love you to join me on the 4th of March and this live free webinar I'm offering, the 7 secrets to a successful move to Spain. We're going to cover all these different areas of immigration, housing, finances, healthcare. We're going to look at all the different aspects of a successful move and how you can go about really setting up your ideal and your dream life here. So if you want to register for that, remember, you do need to register and spaces are limited. So go to spainrevealed.com/Spain webinar. It's on the 4th of March, totally free. I'd love you to come along. I'll also drop a link down below to that webinar registration page so you can click on that. I think that webinar is going to be a great next step after this video if you're really curious about learning more about how to move to Spain and set up your ideal life here. And look, if you're watching this video after the 4th of March and that webinar has already happened, then click that link anyway, and I'll make sure I send you through to a page where you can sign up for my newsletter. And that way I can keep in touch with you about all the things I've got coming out to help you plan and figure out your move to Spain. So I hope to see you on the 4th of March. And thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. All right, I'll see you then. Ciao.